rumors for the LA Thieves roster are all over the place for the last week, so I want to cover everything that's happened and give you my opinion on what I really think LAT should do, right? As the resident LAT fan, people like to know what I think the team should do, which I'm honored for that, by the way, but I'm just a fan like most of you guys, so take my opinion with a grain of salt. But obviously, we saw that they were sticking, and then we saw they were looking to replace Dan Ghosty with potentially making an offer here to sell him, but also looking at Abuza and Draza, and then we saw that they were looking to try and buy out Joe Deceives, and then we got that they were looking at either a BZ, Joe Deceives, or Neptune in place of Envoy. So the team went from not making a change to potentially making a two-man change, reportedly looking at making a two-man change in like literally a week, which is obviously a pretty quick turnaround. It just also goes to show you how insane Rostermania can be, right? This is just what happens in COD Rostermania, and this year it's also exponentially crazier because of all the free agents and the caliber of free agents we have. I mean, pretty much other than Scrap, Hydra, Simp, and the Optic guys, it seems like anyone is up for grabs, right? So it is getting pretty crazy out here, but let's kind of talk about this, right? The most recent rumor that I haven't actually talked about on a video just yet was this one here. LAT are trying to buy out or potentially targeting buying out a BZ, buying out Joe Deceives, or signing Neptune, who is an unrestricted free agent, for Envoy going into Black Ops 7. And a lot of what people have been saying, and I've seen other creators, other streamers and things talking about, is Joe Deceives really seems to be the key piece here that is like the first domino that needs to fall, right? Because when you got multiple teams trying to buy him out, whoever ends up getting him, or if Ultra turned down all the offers, apparently they already turned down an offer from the Gentlemates, then they can decide what they want to do with their team, right? So we really got to wait to see what happens with Joe Deceives before any more official news and rumors are likely going to come out. Obviously, Celium has an offer from Thieves, apparently also has an offer from Falcons. He could even return to FaZe if he really wants to, right? Depending on maybe what rosters are developed at those teams or what those contracts look like. But I'd imagine the contract doesn't really matter because Falcons are probably going to be like double what everyone's going to offer anyway. So if he wants the money, he's just going to go to Falcons. I don't think that really matters at that point. But if he wants to win, what players sign to those teams or what players are on those teams is going to be a big thing. What should LAT do, right? We have our core 4 roster of Scrap, Hydra, Ghosty, and Envoy. And a lot of people in my comments on my live streams think that either A, they shouldn't change, B, they should drop one of Envoy or Ghosty. More people actually tend to say Envoy, or C, they should drop both of them. And I actually put out a poll. This was, I mean, at this point, this was a few days ago, right? When they originally were supposed to be sticking. And I asked, specifically mostly LAT fans, what do you think about them sticking? 44% said W, 36% said L, and then obviously 19% of people weren't LAT fans. So thank you guys for clicking on that and not skewing the poll too much. But it seemed like the Thieves fans, at least based on this poll of 1,200 votes, were down for them to stick, right? Some people, it's close to 50-50 in terms of who wants them to stick and who doesn't, but it was slightly leaning over to I think they should stick type of thing. And that's kind of where I lined up, right? I think the Thieves team has a potential. We know what they're capable of. They just really fizzled out at the end. And I think and I don't think that came down to just one person. I think they all struggled. At Champs, they all were bad. At EWC, Envoy definitely struggled the most, but the team just lacked teamwork. The comms didn't sound as good as they did earlier in the year. The control fell off big time. Maybe updates to the game, right? The control spawns changing were part of that, but I don't think this was an individual. This wasn't like a personnel issue. To me, this felt just like for some reason the team fell off, whether it was complacency, whether it was game changes, whether it was who knows, right? But the team just did not work together anymore. But if the Thieves are going to make a change, I think there is one clear-cut best option here. Now, obviously, best in my mind is just based off of like what I know. I don't know what buyouts look like. I don't know how much players cost. Maybe the person that I think is the best option will cost infinitely more than anybody else, and it's just not realistic, right? When you add in the financial aspect of things, maybe it's not the best. But when we're looking at just like personnel, in-game stats, things like that, based on what we've seen in Black Ops 6, I think there's a clear best option. It's one of these guys on screen. Now, I personally don't think Dylan Envoy was like bad enough to be replaced, right? I think the recency bias of Champs, EWC, and those being the biggest events definitely weigh him down a bit here, but pretty much after every single major, we would talk about on stream and in videos how Envoy was amazing on LAN, how he always stepped up in big moments, would give you a 1v2 when you need it in search, would hit the right rotation, and I mean, just looking at his breaking point cards, which are stats only, 85 overall based on just the stats is pretty good, also considering he is one of those players that makes plays you don't see on the scoreboard, you don't see on the stats. So we know Envoy is even having more value than just the basic statistical card that we see on screen, which of course isn't everything. But when you look at what he does best, right? When you look at what Envoy's best at, it's objective and it's also control. He's just a really good control player. He's also a good SMD player. And then his hard point is where he kind of has a bit of a fall off. But again, he's getting in the hill, right? Which frees up Hydra, which frees up Scrap to be superstars and get kills, which is exactly what you need when you have those two guys on the team. So for me personally, I think the clear upgrade path, again, don't know what buyouts cost, don't know what contracts cost. The clear upgrade path is trying to get Joe DeCeves back on the team. Now, Joe D, a lot of people say they shouldn't have dropped him. They should have kept him. I think a lot of that is hindsight, right? Some people were saying that when they first formed the quote unquote super team a year ago, right? Which those people were, I guess maybe they were ahead of the curve, right? I think Joe DeCeves is a great player. I don't know if many people predicted him to be as good as he was in Black Ops 6, but looking at what Joe DeCeves does, this guy does it in every single mode, but most importantly, he gets in the hill and he gets kills, right? Joe D, to me, if you're going to make a change on this team, right, if you're going to have Scrap and Hydra, I think you keep Dan Ghosty, you bring on Joe DeCeves. It has somebody in SMG that's willing to get in the hill and let Hydra be Hydra, but also lifts that floor, in my opinion, for the team where you know he's going to guarantee kills. Now, again, I really don't want to drop Dylan Envoy. I'm also one of those fans that's like, I very much support the players on my team. I'm very like optimistic and positive, and I want to support those players as players. I'm not someone who's like, okay, we're losing, we got to drop everyone, and like, that's not really the way I do it. So I'm definitely maybe a bit biased to the people on the team because I just really like those guys and their personalities and watching them play together. But if they were to make a change, I think Joe D really raises the floor of this team because he very rarely has bad maps. Joe DeCeves is a player that very rarely has a bad map, has a bad series, and even if he's having a bad map or a bad series, it doesn't ever feel like it is super bad, right? Like a lot of people like to say like Envoy is like a 0.5, a 0.6 sometimes in hardpoint, which he is, right? That does happen. Joe DeCeves doesn't often have maps like that. If he's able to get in the hill and he's able to, you know, play from the hill and get kills while Hydra does his thing, Scrap does his thing, and you have Dan Ghosty also who's able to get in the hill to free up Joe on certain times, depending on how good their map control is, right? And if they're able to get him there, because somebody's going to spawn up with an AR and he's going to have to hold the lane. He's not just going to run straight to the hill, right? I think there also is a misconception there. Everybody needs to touch the hill at times, but when you have Scrap and Hydra who are generational slayers, like some of the best we've literally ever seen in the history of COD, not even just right now, having two guys that will also default to the hill more often than not, I think is beneficial for them. So I think Joe D is the floor raiser. I think he's a guy that if you can get him, he's going to do Envoy's job and also be able to consistently get more kills. He might not be statistically in the hill as much as Envoy, as you can see here, but it's pretty freaking close. I mean, Joe DeCeves was one of the best. He might have actually been the second best SMG at hill time. And I mean, just to look at the other two, Abizi and Neptune, as potential replacements. For Abizi, I mean, this was a rough year for him, right? I think the overall cards and the stats, it's just a really rough year for Abizi. He might have a nice bounce back next year, but Abizi's not really an objective player, right? That was simp for this team, whether you think that's the right move or not. I don't know that Abizi and Hydra, in my opinion, is going to work because I think that leaves Dan Ghosty really having to, or whoever they pick up. If it's not Ghosty, then who knows? But in my hypothetical, really having to get in the hill. So I don't really like the Abizi Hydra duo. Neptune is another interesting one because he does get in the hill. The Surge as a team actually split the hill time amongst them pretty well. Didn't really have like a default hill kitten, as we like to say in COD. So I think Nep's an interesting one and a player we have not heard a lot about. But I personally think Joe DeCeves would just be the ultimate floor raiser and honestly probably even ceiling raiser because we know he has clutch and SND. His SND numbers on land this year, as you can see there, were not too great. We're not as good as Envoys, but he's really good at respawn and he's good at search and destroy. And this is only, I mean, he's only been in the league for a couple years, right? He's still really young, one of the youngest players in the game, hence why his buyout from Ultra might be really expensive or even impossible to buy him out. But if Thieves were to make one of these rumored moves, I think this is the one I would do. But let me know in the comments if you were Thieves GM, you were Thieves management, and you could make any of the rumored moves, right? Whether it's Celium, Abuza, Joe DeCeves, Neptune, BZ, which one of those five would you make? What the Thieves are going to do with this roster, I still think is really up in the air, right? Like the news and the rumors change so fast, and I even hear a little bit of things here and there before they get announced, right? I think at this point, everything that's been announced, I pretty much have heard. Like, I think everything I know has been publicly announced by either Ronnie or Ghost of Hope or someone like that. I don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, I think there's a real world where like Ultra say you can't have Joe DeCeves, Abizi gets bought out by Falcons, and you know Thieves just can't match that, and maybe they decide like they can't get Neptune, or Neptune goes somewhere else, they don't want to get Neptune, Celium goes to Falcons, Abuza goes to FaZe, like all these rumors that are happening, and they're just forced to stick, which the players wanted it to stick apparently, and the management's the ones who wanted to make the change. I really don't know. I think there's a real world where we see the same four players play for Thieves, and I think there's a world where it's a two-man change, right? It feels like it could be anywhere in between there. It could be one, it could be two, it could be zero, but I'll keep you up to date with everything Rostermania. So make sure you sub to the channel. Shout out to all the new subs. I appreciate you guys checking out the channel, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one.